So I guess you know what happens now. But the question is, if this is the final solution, or if we aim for something totally different. So we can make a minimal approach, or we aim for the maximum approach, which probably would look like this. So thank you very much. I'm here and I'm very happy to talk about how we actually do it. I'm not talking about of what I'm not talking about, but I'm more than happy to explain you a little bit what it means for us to think of sustainability in the design. And hopefully I can address it in a way that you start thinking a little bit. So when I was invited to come to this beautiful stage, I start thinking of the way I would probably commute. So the first question was, whoa, Munich, Milano, that's like a hike, 513 kilometers. Yep, considering my carbon footprint, I should start walking now. So it would take me 9 days, considering the fact that I have to eat something. Yes, I would have and cause a certain carbon footprint, but apparently I wouldn't really measure it. Then I was considering taking the train. Even so, 13 hours in a comparison was better than walking, but still, oh my God. And then I was looking deeply into my carbon footprint, figuring out 5 hours by car, me alone in the car, 150,000 grams of CO2. But, of course, I took the plane. So now, my biggest hope is that you compensate all my bad carbon footprint because of the knowledge I give you now, and you spread the word. So what does it mean to have a carbon footprint? So just for that, I want to give you an example of what is a ton of CO2. So if you actually taking a hot shower for 9 days long, standing there in the hot shower, that's around 1 ton of CO2. Or, for example, you're going home and you're just fed up with the fair, you want to relax, and you can watch TV for quite a while. Or, for example, coffee to go is like a really good example, 8,000 cups of coffee to go, 1 ton of CO2. So what does it mean to my trip? I can stay for 2.5 days under the shower. So you see, somehow you can actually feel a little bit what does a carbon footprint means. But what does it has to do with car industry and how does it bother us? And I think the question is, how do you actually tackle it? Why are we thinking of carbon footprint? And what is the goal? And I think I would love to know who is aware of the sustainability goals of the United Nations. Who has ever heard of it? Quite a few. There could be more. I hope when you leave, you actually go in the internet and ask for what it is. So the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, there are 17 of the goals who are actually facing us, facing the world development. And I think it's not a matter of if I want to tackle the Sustainable Development Goals, it's more that we have to face them. And BMW is actually absolutely convinced that out of the 17 goals, which are about poverty, which are about life below water, these 3 goals, it's number 11, 12, and 13, are the most important goals we have to actually face. And it's basically made for government, but I think all the industries can definitely work with that. So, which means if you go deeper into the SDGs, there's a big explanation what kind of responsibility you might have as a manufacturer and also as an employee. So it's really worth it to look it up. So we have tackled this issue of sustainability goals, and now, of course, the problem is how to actually bring that into life. So since I'm here and representing design, and I guess there are a lot of designers out there, I can definitely tell you the whole process starts with design. So what does that mean? The number of 80% shows you the impact the designer has on the final product when it comes to sustainability. That means, so as soon as you take your pencil and you make a line, you define already material, you define manufacturing process, you define tooling, you define material flow. That's all in the responsibility of the design. So it's a huge number when you imagine that, and mostly we are not aware of that, what we really cause. So that is, I think, the number I normally jump on when I explain to my designers what kind of responsibility they really have. To face the whole situation of design is normally we talk about the upper part of this island. It's beautiful, there's the palm tree, the sun is shining, that's the nice design our customers want to see. And that's exactly what we designed for to look at. But when you talk about sustainability, you have to see also the bottom part. So this island wouldn't be as stable if you would not think of the substantial part of sustainability. So again, it's so fractal, and you probably don't really understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, you make it alive. That's something we did back with surface design. But the bottom part, sustainability, means you really have to understand what the product is made of. And this is an example I do with students. It's a kind of workshop. So I ask them to buy a product which is like worth €5, and then they have to tear it apart. And that's the first time when they really start being so surprised how many different parts is like a simple lamp made of. And it's not only about what the material is, it's also that you see they start figuring, oh my God, there's even a print on the plastic. So the print is also a color, and the color has to come from somewhere, has to be delivered, has to be printed. It's also a process. So for them, they're touching a surface, but they start understanding what this one line means and what kind of impact they have. The next part of this workshop is that they have to actually go deeper and see where all the materials come from. And this is from a workshop in the University of Umeå I did last year. So these students, they got really eager to figure out all the streams of materials and how is it shipped, or is it flown, or is it like from raw material, or how can they actually substitute it maybe. So to be aware of the kilometers they cause with the designs they do is something they're really start being lightening up. And the second thing is that, of course, they start wonder how they can improve the product. And that's the second part of the workshop I do. They should start rethinking how they actually improve it by different points. I will show you later how to actually improve it. So this is an eye-opening workshop, which is super simple, and you can do it with your team. It's so easy, and it's so opening. So the question then, when they start realizing what kind of impact they have and where the materials come from, I think then it's the time to really explain the whole story. So, of course, we design cars, but it's not only about the one and only car design we do, it's definitely the holistic view on the product. This is something we start doing the first time with the i3 product, with BMW i, and we were looking down deeply in the materials, the supply chain, the production phase, and the end of life, which is a huge difference. It's a total different look on the product than rather looking at the product itself. Also calculating a carbon footprint from the raw material to the end of life. So the question is it an end-of-life product, or are you tackling circular economy? And I think that is something where BMW at the moment is really facing a situation to think of, do we really have an end-of-life strategy? We do have a big recycling center, and we work hard on that. to get the raw materials back and to bring them back into the circle. Because we know materials, they have an end. We know it. And it's not only that the materials that they do have an end of sourcing, it's also that we are aware that some supply chains are definitely worth looking in. For example, electromobility is causing a lot of new problems we are facing. So if you know that you want to work circular, the next question is, how do I implement that in my design process? That would mean you have to think totally new, because you know in the end you want to take it out. That does mean that your whole materials, they're not tied together anymore. You can't stick and glue everything. You have to make it to be reassembled. You have to look deeper into the materials, how actually, especially in a car, it's so complicated, and you like to get stuff out, you really have to rethink a whole new design process. And that is something where you really start from zero. And the next thing is, and I think this is the most difficult thing, it's embedded in the culture of your company. So I think we are totally aware of all what we do here, and we can technically do it, but the cultural change in a company, that is something which really has to go, it's a top-down movement, and it has to be coming from above too. So this is something where I always encourage leaders of companies to open up to this cultural change, and this is what it is, because it's a kind of attitude you have. And right now I have the big chance to work in our strategic department too, so that makes it possible to really design the strategy, the way to understand how you actually embed it. So, and I promised you to tell you a little bit about how you actually improve your product. And definitely you can do it through reduction. Just take stuff out. Whatever you don't have to be manufactured does not have a carbon footprint. So it sounds pretty easy. The question is, with what do you substitute? You can actually reuse stuff, which I was just talking about. Why don't you think of pieces you can actually take out and put in somewhere else on its end of life? It could be an easy approach. Recycling. Why not recycle? Or why not thinking about the whole recycling process in the beginning, which would mean you have monomaterials, like you can do the plastic back, you shred it, and you can injection mold the same thing, which would mean then you use recycled materials. Saving weight. Why would you save weight? I think for a product like a table, it would not make too much sense to substitute with carbon. The impact of carbon is huge. The table stands. So if you don't have a moving table, the light resources are not really that impressive. If you're talking about a car, which has a fuel consumption, it's more interesting. So normally, if you think about saving weight, you can actually reduce the consumption of fuel. Interesting. When it comes to electromobility, I learned it's not that important anymore. But you always have to consider what it is made for, purpose-driven design. So if it's a chair you have to carry around, maybe it's better if it's light. Otherwise you need too much energy to move it. So interesting then is also to say if I can use recycled materials. My shoes are made out of plastic from the ocean. It's possible. It's just a matter of starting it. It's a matter of asking the right questions and also approaching the industry and demanding it. I think that is a big part. We were just talking about it. It's starting now. It might be more expensive in the beginning, but if you start really, if a community is asking for it, it will change. What we introduced the first time was when we designed the i3 was using fast-growing materials like we call it kenaf. It was a plant from growing from the fields, and we made it visible. So we didn't cover it up with any kind of plastics, and the dashboard is made out of this material, which has definitely a huge impact on a carbon footprint. Tackling the issue of supply chains, really important. So we work together, the design department works together with the supply chain management and also the guys from the life cycle assessment. So whenever we want to introduce a new material, we always prove, if it's safe to talk about it, that we don't do any greenwashing. And that's really important for you too. And of course, in the end, costs are very important. If this whole process is too expensive, nobody actually would buy it. So from that, this is like this kind of like sustainability spider. And whenever you start a new project, you can actually also point out where you want to buy in. And then in the end, you can prove if you actually were able to do it. But I think a good example was also from Renault. It's the same what we tried with the i3. If you want to really change something, you have to do a kind of revolutionary design. It's much easier to start from a white canvas and design something radically new than just improving. You will always get a little less footprint, but you will not be able to do this paradigm shift of a total new material, total new product. So it's much easier. And this helped us to develop BMW i because of this task. And the biggest issue of this whole process of developing the i3 was the right question. You have to ask different and new questions. Otherwise, you will not be able to do any kind of shifting. If you continue the way you work, sustainability has a hard time. So, of course, why would we do that? And I think sustainability always aims for the best solution for economical, ecological, and social. And you have to always tackle these three together. Otherwise, if you miss the one thing, it will be obvious. So I'm always asked why I'm so energetic about that and what is driving you. And it's definitely, I want to be grandchildren friendly. And when my grandchildren ask me what I did at BMW, I would love to say that I tried my best to leave it to a better place. And funny enough, on the 22nd of April is Earth Day. Every year's Earth Day, but this is coming up next Sunday. And they tackle the issue of plastic pollution. And I have a nice example of picture which we did. It's the new i3, and we are working together on the Ocean Plastic Conservatory here in Lisboa. And we actually start really thinking of implementing new plastic resources into our cars. And I think with this picture, I would love to thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you can spread my carbon footprint or lower my carbon footprint now in taking all this knowledge with you. Thank you so much.